Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking out time for this Techmarch finale. So, a little bit about this initiative. So, Techmarch was an initiative started by NASSCOM 10,000 startups, which started in July 2016. The vision was to bring together the smart hardware startups and products out of the country, giving them an bouquet of opportunities in terms of providing them good connects in technical and business. So this program included a 8-city tour to invite applications from startups in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Coimbatore, Cochin, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Delhi, and Kolkata. So far, we received 300 plus applications, and out of that, we formed a jury where all the jury members were here: Mrs. Vani, Kola, Vishwanath from Forge, Avinash from Revix, Manohar from BOSCH, all these guys. So the idea was to give top 5, top 6 startups to people like Bosch, Intel, Qualcomm, all the big giants we work very closely, right? And all the global treks. The vision of this tour was very simple, just to highlight smart hardware products, just to give them a recognition, just to find these startups across the country. But the scale became huge once we got, K-Start supported us, Intel supported us, Bosch supported us, and others, various accelerators and makerspaces across the country. So part of that, we did a roadshow across the country, 8 cities. The idea is not to find out startup that is there, but idea is to tap the regional hardware ecosystem. If I did something in Ahmedabad, so just to tell them that this is something organizations like NASSCOM, Intel, Bosch, they are working with hardware. Investors like Kalaari, K-Star, they are looking out to invest in hardware startups, smart hardware startups. So that was there. So in each city, we did an event. Top 6, top 7 startups from that part of the country did a showcase. Part of that, we did a roadshow. And we visited Intel, Bosch, makerspaces, accelerators. We did some interviews. And we tried to make a video out of it, which will be out very soon, and give it back to people like you to understand what this is a scenario in the whole India about the hardware space. So it's been 3 months now. Been traveling across India. We got 300 applications. Top 5 startups you see today, we're gonna pitch. They got selected amongst all those 300. And post that, then the vision and the idea was just to, I'll repeat it again, just to give them a recognition. It was, and give them an opportunity like this. We do a lot of global treks, we do a lot of corporate connects, investor connects. So this was the whole agenda. To start with the day, we have, I'll call Mr. Manohar. He's a Startup Alliances head from Bosch, and to moderate the panel. And the panel is on challenges and opportunities in hardware startup ecosystem. So I request Manohar to come on stage first. Then we have Mrs. Vani Kola, founder of K-Start. Then we have Mrs. Margaret Burgraff, vice president of Intel. Then we have Mr. Naveen Asrani, director of startups Microsoft. We have Mr. Uday Prabhu, head of IoT Bosch, India. Then we have Mr. Manjunath Hebbar, founder of Buoyanci. So Manohar, over to you. Yeah.
We're very excited to meet the actual fun with the startups being here. A lot of work has been prepared for us. So just 2 questions is what I want to know. Since everybody else on the stage is celebrity except me, I'm Manohar, Startup Alliance of Bosch. The reason why I'm here is actually for myself more than anybody else. My boss somehow keeps reading these reports that there's trillions of dollars in IoT and hardware space. And he keeps pushing me, where exactly is that? And I have no clue where it is, to be honest. I thought I will use this opportunity to discuss with the panel. Right, and yeah, so I have few queries, particularly on the opportunities that are there in this field. And of course, we all know the challenges when it comes to hardware. Let me start with Mr. Manjunath Hebbar. Is it really smart hardware that you want to call? How do you want to term it? What exactly is happening in this hardware field?
Okay. That's very interesting. If you really look at it, anything you touch or work with has some hardware part to it. We'll continue to have it as well, right? The so-called smartness, which actually is to do with how well that particular hardware is going to help you do a specific job far better than yourself, is where the whole world is headed. So definitely you see a trend where actually the hardware is not dumb anymore. It's going to be having its own brain, so to say, to really make it smart and also the user smarter. So you have the right of the drive coming through where the hardware is actually going to lead an innovation, wherein we've always seen that the software has been adding innovation, right? So riding on the smartness of the hardware is the wave I think we have to really watch out and then go forward with.
Interesting. Would you also agree this the industry, there's a kind of blur that is coming? If you take Meditech for instance, it's probably no longer Meditech. Maybe it's going to consumer electronics, and you will find the gadgets and the shops that you would buy, and you'll probably start monitoring your heart rate and kidney, etc. You would no longer probably go to a clinic to find a doctor. Should the industry be worried with this trend, or how should they be catching this up?
That's right. It's really good in the sense we defined the industry and its boundaries for a convenience of business operations, right? Because at the end of the day, a user is a user. So there is definitely a blurring of walls between so-called industries happening. You don't know what is hospital and hospitality. So because if you would like to go to a hospital, you really expect the fantastic hospitality you expect in a 7-star hotel. So which actually means that users are demanding what they want, and these so-called industry verticals are going to be challenged anyway. So with these devices and also ubiquitousness of how you really work with yourself as well as everything around, this blurring of the industry I think will continue. It will be fueled further as well. This is something which both the guys in the industry as well as the user will be worried about as well.
Sure. Thanks. Naveen, if I may have to ask you, HoloLens, Surface, Xbox, now connected devices.
I think
Is
the huge.
Microsoft changing their stripes from a software company to something else?
No, I think it's not about Microsoft. It's about intelligent solutions being built by a number of innovators across. And if you look at hardware, there are three kinds of hardware. You have engaged hardware, where you actually interact with the devices. You've got immersive hardware, where you are in a room and you engage with it at a subliminal level. And you've got under the hood hardware, which you don't know is happening and is yet providing you experiences. And all these three have three very different use cases, but the intelligence of leveraging the hardware with analytics at an aggregate level is the opportunity for every one of us. And I think the reason why that device becomes a channel for amazing insights, because data has got the shelf life of a vegetable, right? You keep it for a short period of time, it has no value after that. To address the insights of whether it's the use case is edutech, whether the use case is health tech, whether it's various appliances that are coming in, is all about the insights and new services that people use it. And the beauty about India is the canvas it provides. Never have you found 1 billion people who are getting connected at the real time. So I think between India, China, and parts of Africa and Southeastern Europe is one of the best test beds for hardware, but I think more than that is hardware making a difference in people's lives. And that canvas is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I think that's the conversation you want to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you. Margaret, if Galileo, Curie, what are you getting into? Would there be Intel inside in agriculture? Would you enter into new domains?
We're not close to any possible thing that you can imagine. I mean, think of all of the devices that are available today. 85% of them are not yet smart devices. That's where the huge market is. The fact that we now have processors like the size of buttons and even smaller as we go later and later towards, 2020, compute will be ubiquitous. Consider use cases like chip in a pill, right? That you take your vitamins in the morning and your blood composition is being fed back into some sort of a system so your doctor can give you absolute specific, just customizable to you, what do you need? Today, all of you guys in this audience probably would take exactly the same, multivitamin for man, right? But all of us are different. We've got different blood groups, we've got different body compositions, and the reality is we're all smart enough to figure out our needs to be healthy human beings have got to be customized to us. And the opportunity is in customized solutions. So I'm extremely excited, and I'm really extremely excited to be part of the Intel team, a 50-year-old team which drove, compute from the mainframe to the MIDI frame to the mini frame to workstations to desktops to laptops to mobile and now to ubiquity. I mean, I think that Intel is the godfather of the industrial or of the Internet of Things possibility. And you know, I wish that there was more people in this room to be excited about hardware. I spent 15 years of my life in Apple Computer, so the device end was where I began. And now we're at a place where everything will be smart, everything will be connected, and it will just make for a lot more efficient world and a lot better experience for our human race.
Thank you. Interesting way of looking at the things, Margaret. Thank you.
I look at things a bit differently. It comes from, I'm Irish. You know, when you come from a population of 5 million people, you know, in an island out there on the west coast of Ireland, you look at everything differently.
Interesting. Uday, we have the opportunity, we are working with the BOSCH, so to meet often. Most of our conversations start with what if. So what if this water bottle starts talking to me? What if this mic starts talking to me? What's your world? How do you look at this world?
I think it's a very interesting world, and from a hardware perspective, I'd like to classify it under 3 layers. So one is the layer which is more physics oriented, which is the sensing part, and which is where a ton of innovation is going on. And the next layer is where you have the compute part, where the likes of Intel and others are increasing the power of computation and miniaturizing it to a great level. And then you have the next layer of communication. So you have a range of communication networks that are out there, protocols out there. And the charm is in how do you mix and match these 3. And as you mentioned, if I'm able to get a sensor that does beautiful sensing, I think some of the startups who are presenting are going to be presenting it. You can do wonders. The bottle could be talking to me one day and saying that, don't drink this. It's been stale. It's been left open. And you know what creepy crawlies have been going in and coming out. It might talk to you and prevent you from drinking. Or you never know, you might also say that, okay, maybe why don't you slip in a little bit of vodka? It looked the same. Might be able to get through this panel hearing much better. So.
It should probably say how much I should drink before I drive.
Exactly. I think the innovation lies in all 3 areas, and the sensing area is going to be very critical if you're going to revolutionize devices which do amazing things out there.
Thank you. Vani, I was trying to inquire about Kalaari Capital and your work at K-Start. They told your offices are pretty neat and very aesthetic in nature. Would you have a different view to this whole hardware opportunities and probably your investments in Fin, probably, if you could explain?
I was thinking that I started my career as a software engineer, wanted to run as far away from hardware as possible because at least back then, in my mind at least, hardware was done, okay? And software was eating the world, and it was all about how do you put software into everything, right? And it's interesting how things come back. But from the vantage point of, by the way, we run a 650 million early stage tech-focused venture firm out of Bangalore. And I do think that there is and our primary focus is India market. So, our worldview is India opportunity. So I can't comment to who's going to buy a bottle that talks back to you. It's hard for me to visualize myself buying one, but who knows. But in any case, when I think about it from a venture capital perspective, I think there's a tremendous opportunity, but one where you have to be patient. I think we are very, very early into how these smart devices can be meaningful enough to create a great company and a great revenue profitable business, right? So how does this get into the consumer's hand or into the industrial products? And all of that is happening. I remember investments into RFID way back, I think 2 decades back, really didn't take off. Not the promise of the RFID itself or the many, many use cases that were dreamt up. Just business models didn't work with a scale that you could fund and succeed to build a multi-billion-dollar business, right? So from my vantage point of view, I think that where we are going from smart devices, there will be some great innovations that happen. What those are, we can all kind of for fun conjecture, right? I was reading what are at least what seems stupid today, where IoT devices has been applied, and apparently there's a diaper maker in Japan where they put it in and you can get an alert that the diaper needs to be changed. So, and so fine, right? I mean, possible. I don't know. Maybe my children, when they have children, want to buy diapers with IoT. You know, it's so hard to tell where all innovation will apply because consumers are fickle. Certain things work. If I tell you I was in China in May, and the device that maybe I'm sort of gender stereotyping here. I was very fascinated with a rice cooker with IoT device. Okay, it was doing all kinds of stuff. It could order rice for me when I didn't know I was out of rice at home because the cooker knew, you know, scanning each time from your rice bag. Anyway, you know, you can think of many things, right? So use cases for fun. Do they sell? Can you make money? I think that's sort of the framework with which I look at this. But so for me, it's less about the physics and the science and the manufacturing. It's about what is the end user requirement, who's going to think and innovate at a point where it's not just the hardware, it's the usability of it from a core value proposition through which you could build a brand, a franchise, a profitable business, and you know, how do you distribute it, what are the business models? Those are the questions that I think about and spend time on.
Absolutely. Thank you. I mean, this gets 50% closer to my promotion. I got at least 10 use cases with this discussion, particular IoT space. Margaret, let me flip to the challenges part. We being an MNC and we have now huge R&D centers out based out of Germany, and we also started like a captive setup in India, and we do support the central. Are there any local for local challenges that you really address from the Intel in India, and you also have a huge R&D setup here? What kind of challenges that you come across when you get some of these things executed back from India, particularly from a hardware point of view? I know that in software you have a huge play. From the hardware point of view, do you see any challenges, right from the talent, right from the ecosystem?
Well, I mean, I'm not the expert in this because I'm not based in India. I'm based in Silicon Valley right now. But we built our Clover Trail and our Bay Trail cost reduced product here in India. So I don't think that there is a problem with regards to the talent. Some of the smartest engineers that I know and that I work with in Silicon Valley were educated and brought up here in India. So, you know, I think that it's more your own perception of your limitations and what you decide is a limitation to your own success. It's like looking for reasons why you're not successful rather than you just lack the imagination. I mean, I grew up a child in a farm in Ireland, and I am a vice president in the top 50 Fortune 50 company. You know, that isn't a natural path, but I just refused to give up on my dream of being whatever it is I wanted to be in the world. Yes, you have huge infrastructure issues. I mean, when I drive around and see just the vast population that is here, but I also think that, you know, as a human race, we've got to help resolve some of the problems that there's 200 million people that don't have access to electricity, that don't have access to water, right? There's that clean water. These are opportunities that we need to take on as just a human race and take care of one another. So I don't think that there is anything that's a limitation to India being a successful hub, particularly when by 2021, according to the Evans report, you're going to have more software developers here in India than anywhere else in the world. Today, I believe that there's like just 200,000 people of a gap in software developers between North America and India. And I would argue maybe if you sent home the software developers that are based in Silicon Valley, you'd close that gap almost right away. Trump might end up doing. Well, he might send me home too, right? And then he would send home a lot of what's great about the United States. Yeah, we're not going to have that discussion here. But I'm very, very optimistic. I think, yes, there are big challenges, but where there are challenges, there are opportunities. So that's all I've got to say about that.
Thank you. I mean, it's quite very motivating. I feel like having my own startup now. If that was it. Right. So you mentioned Silicon Valley. Vani, I just want to come back to you. Not much of Silicon really happens here. I mean, it's still like having a lot of good batsmen in Indian cricket team without a fast bowler yet. How do we strike the balance? How do we actually build a good ecosystem in India from the hardware point of view?
the question is, do we need to build, you know, a competency in hardware, or do we need to build ability to solution from global competencies that are available, and first find value drivers into domestic market, and then maybe find value drivers to global markets, if you will. You know, I don't think this is getting manufactured in US, although they're talking about it. That's a whole different question around robotics, is bringing manufacturing closer back, right? Germany, which didn't manufacture cars for a long time within Germany, right, is now setting up plants, because most of it is getting, you can do a lot of things with robotics today that you couldn't do before. It's a whole different topic, but the robots may not be getting manufactured in Germany necessarily, right? So I think in a globalized world that we are in, I know you don't want to go here, but the Trump model doesn't work, at least in my mind, right? I think we have to find global centers of excellence, and then you see how do you apply that. So to me, I look at what can be solution in India. I don't think we need to build a fab in India. I don't think we need to necessarily create a scale of manufacturing in India. That's not to say Foxconn should or should not set up a center here. But in any case, as a venture capitalist, we won't be funding a Foxconn manufacturing center in India. It's at a different scale. You know, manufacturing has to happen with a different scale of capital. But innovation, in terms of what you're trying to do, could a Nest come out of India? Why not, right? So there is, so we need to create in India an innovation economy. After all, if we are going to have maximum number of engineers and not maximum number of unskilled labor, maybe we have that also. But you know, manufacturing and innovation are at two different value chains, right? So since this is not a debate on economics of policies for India, to me today I see a hard time seeing manufacturing grow in India. That's from a very uneducated point of view. I'm not saying that that's from just when I look at, I can't even get things done at home with a consistent process, you know, the DNA for us to build, you know, deep manufacturing, could that be built? I don't know. But I think from a investment perspective, I see huge opportunity for innovation drivers and leapfrog to all the many problems that we can list out, to say how can smart enablement provide the solutions for the challenges that we have. And that, I think, is a big domestic opportunity in India, for which maybe 80% of manufacturing has happened outside. That's okay.
Fair enough. I think that's a fair point. You mentioned about manufacturing. Mr. Hebbar, Make in India, would that the theme that we should look at, or what exactly is happening, what exactly is not happening? Probably from a corporate, we can't comment on that, but you're free to comment on that.
No, I would see it a little differently. See, back in '85 when I started my first venture, we had no option other than starting a hardware startup. There was no mention of anything else, and we made everything here. Okay, so we licensed about 85 new products across the world during that time. Right, if you look at it, this is the second generation of kind of an evolution when it comes to so-called hardware and making it in India. Right? I think we are more smarter today as to what we can make here or how we can make here with the ecosystem, as well as what we can do elsewhere across the world as well. So if you look at Make in India as one element of it, it's, I think, is a conscious policy enablement effort, which I think is important. Okay? So if you're really interested in an economy to thrive on, you need interventions. I think that's the intervention that's going on. But do you build a business because there is a policy? I wouldn't do so. Is there a need in the market? My money worth it? Time worth it? I think I have to go forward with it. But the mood in the industry actually is going to be fueled by the policies and how in the direction of where the policies are headed. In that kind of a thing, if you really look at that as a lens, I think Make in India is a good thing to do. So because there are so many things that are coming in the gamut of Make in India as an intervention. Be it the number of incubation centers, funds of funds, varieties of them. You look at all of them and translate it back to a vision an entrepreneur carries. I guess they can make use of it much smartly now than used to be earlier. So that way, I think it's pretty good.
Thank you. I think Make in India is good, and we should be proud of Made in India henceforth. Uday, from a different perspective, just to tap into your abilities and engineering, we keep talking about the startups whom we meet, and many times you would say that, get me these startups who would solve these challenges in my hardware space. and they'll be my suppliers for rest of the life. What exactly do you look into when you meet such startups from the product quality point of view?
I think these days, due to the onslaught of platforms, you have the Raspberry Pis, the Intels, Edisons, and Galileos. It's very easy to put together a product, but it's no stops at that. It's easy to build a prototype, but going from a prototype to a fully functional product that can be rolled out in thousands or 10,000s is a big journey. And I think that level of maturity is what we look for. Is it compliant to regulations? Does it take care of quality aspects? Am I looking at a mature design that is taking into account all the failures that could happen? Is there a way that I can remotely access and fix things? Have people thought through the whole life cycle of the product? And I shouldn't be in a place where, okay, it works great, awesome, but tomorrow I have everything coming back from the field. So that level of maturity is what we look for. And quality is a big topic that needs to be focused on. But in the beginning, of course, you have all the rights to look at all Lego blocks out there, pick the sensors, pick the platform, and put a concept together. And once you get past that, I think we look for the level of intervention that will take this product and really hit the market with the quality it needs.
Fair enough, thanks. Naveen, I just want to understand how you actually tap the ecosystem. I know you work with a lot of startups. What is your mantra of reaching out to such startups, and how do you actually work with this ecosystem?
Actually speaking, the good part about an entrepreneur is they find value themselves. They gravitate towards value, unlike it's very natural for them. And today, a lot of the startups, of course, the initial phase of startup was the application phase, where you had experience with an application. But today, as in more and more startups, and we're seeing this in India predominantly, being data-driven startups, doing a lot of analytics and insights. Now, and the good part about it is they discover us more than we discover them, and I'm being very transparent because they understand the value of what they want. They're far smarter about what they want. So, you have iBot systems that goes to Eureka Forbes and transforms a device of Eureka Forbes into serving water as a service. Why should you buy a device? You'd rather buy water by a liter. Or you've got Altazon and Flutura who are doing some amazing work, and they work, of course, with Microsoft. But I think more importantly is India's the perfect canvas. See, we always claim about the infrastructure. I say the canvas is so clean. It's the lack of infrastructure that always allows you to have a leap. See, remember one thing. In India, we're value seekers as human beings. So whenever we have the old PC, I would want to keep it till I get a laptop, but I like that PC because, I spent a lot of money in it. But if I didn't have those devices, it's a clean slate for me to go and invest. Secondly is connectivity. Never has connectivity leaped the way it has and become accessible. So earlier you had the canvas, but you didn't have the connectivity. With 4G and Reliance Jio and the services are amazing. Okay. Then the third area is compute. With Intel's Moore's Law, and devices are becoming more and more intelligent. So, and then you have an ecosystem of entrepreneurs which are phenomenal, who are leveraging insights and the value they can provide to provide differentiated experiences with different use cases, whether it's a B2B enterprise or as a customer at home at a HVAC systems in a building or a home. So it's this perfect storm that's come together. For me, at Microsoft, the opportunity is because of the back-end data analytics that can be leveraged. And we've been predominantly a company offering solutions in the cloud for a lifetime. But for us, these insights which were there and the opportunity that startups unlock for us, actually speaking, in leveraging that, is that collaboration which we learn from them too. And I think that perfect storm is where we are right now. And I think the reason why I believe so much of it is an opportunity in India and in the other markets is never before have you found this perfect triumvirate come together at the same time. Because you have, see, I'll tell you what, you can find an intelligent device which could not have been connected, which did not have the compute, and did not have a smartphone to monitor it. Right. That perfect storm happens now. So this room is amazing, but I'm sure the next time you're going to run out of space, the next time you have this meeting.
The perfect storm is now. Thank you so much. I think wonderful insights. My day is done. I know what to go back and present to my organization. Probably we have time for two questions, sir. Yeah, two questions, please. Yeah, two.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll ask the question since I have the mic.
Is it more? Okay. Yeah, you go first.
You, sir, please.
So here is the problem, right? We were working on software, and we are migrating to hardware, and we are essentially building a Fitbit for the home. A huge problem that we are facing now is that hardware is nothing like software, right? Software, you could do everything in an agile way. Hardware, at least it's very difficult to do that, right? You know, when you talk about injection molding, we're talking about 30,000 pieces minimum, you know, long iterations. My question is there anything that's possible to just accelerate it? You know, are there partners, not like Foxcons who work on millions, right? But are there partners? Is there any ecosystem in place? Is there something in place where I can iterate quickly and say, look, this is what I want. I want to get 100 pieces now. I want 1,000 of it. I want somebody who can help me with the industrial design.
Okay,
Is there
so
something
you know
in there?
Sachin, stand up. So Sachin works very closely with the Maker Lab within Intel that's based right here. And what they do is work with a lot of startups to help with problems like that, to help quickly innovate, get proof of concept, and evaluate the idea.
Also, the hardware accelerator here with the help you figure out how to manufacture, produce, right? So there are lots of resources in India that are coming up.
Yeah, I can probably, I can meet you. I know few of them might fit into your model of looking. We are tied up with Click, for instance, the SMEs, MSMEs and SMEs. There are plenty of them. We got to know recently. We can see the design model, and I'm pretty sure we could help out on that.
Hi. So I see that in many times, even in hardware sessions, people talk of analytics, etc. But the real hardware innovations, are they really coming out? Because analytics is something which is predominantly a software domain. NoSQL databases are all software, right? Yes, GE may say, oh, I want to become a software company now, right? But there has to be something which is transformational happening on the hardware side. Do you see that sort of thing happening here? Or is it all software?
I think there always has been. Software and hardware work together. You know, without the physical, the digital doesn't exist, right? I mean, autonomous cars and autonomous driving sounded like just crazy ideas and notions 20 years ago. You know, all of the smart watches and the Fitbits and things like that, people didn't even consider them. So I just see them kind of like a bird with two wings, and one is dependent upon the other. And as we have more connectivity and more processing power or performance with lesser power demands, then we can create more solutions. You know, one of the biggest problems I see in today's market is just the fragmentation, and how do you pull all of these pieces together. But then we're in an industry with Internet of Things that we're so much at our infancy, and I think that there's going to be lots of opportunities to consolidate, to come towards whatever will be, for each one of the verticals, a common platform or common solution. So we've only just begun, but I do believe that there's going to be all sorts of new hardware ideas. I mean, I'm sure that people 20 years ago and 40 years ago thought that the hardware we had was just as far as we could possibly get, right? And I think that there's people that are thinking that today. But as human beings, we're going to continue to evolve, and we're going to continue to build. So who knows what tomorrow brings?
Mr. Hebbar,
Right, a question from here.
I have one question.
If you look around as well, I think the kind of innovations you see, which is the edge of it today, is all driven by the fundamental hardware changes that have happened. Right through your medtech devices or aerospace devices also, if you really look at it. The amount of hardware innovation that's happening out there is amazing, one. Second, the beauty of this maturity, right? When it becomes really powerful innovation, it becomes invisible. You'll never even know you're using that piece of hardware which actually is so innovative. All you touch and feel is actually generated by the software part of it. That's the beauty of it. So that is all the tech guys believe, okay? If it becomes invisible, I think we have reached the milestone of really making it truly innovative. That's where it's going.
One last question, sir.
Yeah, I've see. Actually, I have a very interesting thing to say. What I have faced in my hardware startup journey. I spoke about Broadcom. So we started designing our smartwatch on Broadcom. So ultimately, what happened? We reached a point where Broadcom says they will not give us software to flash the Broadcom chip. So what happened, ultimately we have to just discard that product, because if you go to some third party or China, what innovation we are adding, what value we are adding. So if we take Raspberry Pi, that can be a good for a college project, but ultimately we cannot design a custom product based on that. Thereafter I said that I will go to MediaTek and I get their chip and design my custom board. Then what happened, they said they tried, they're very hard. Even I reached to the vice president level in India. They will drive me every time to OEM in China. You pay them NRE amount and get whatever they have, no customization, whatever they have, you bring in India, sell it. Once you become successful, then we'll probably think we can give you license or you can open those things. Thereafter, I went to Qualcomm. Qualcomm said, our requirement is that you pay $100,000 as a license fee, as a first thing. Ultimately, after 1.5 years of all this running up, here up, I dropped all my variables project, which I started 3 years back. So it's a very tough thing, how we are going to get ahead. What I believe is that the whole hardware ecosystem is built towards China. Some simple microcontrollers like Freescale and all 8, 16-bit open system we can get. But complicated system, nobody is putting those things in our hands. How we achieve what we want to do.
So in right. So in the interest of the time, maybe Uday, your last comment, then yeah.
Yeah, very valid question. I think the key thing is when you go about developing the product, I think these are all the parameters that have to be taken into account, right? Your competitive analysis and your ability to generate the product, it's day one, it's the day one job. And most of these organizations have invested heavily and would like to get benefits out of their platform. And so the question I would ask is, if there is uniqueness to it, then you have a roadmap. But if you're trying to do a Me Too product, then you run into all these bottlenecks at all points in life. But there are a lot of open systems out there, open source out there, open hardware out there. But you always end up with a bottleneck where qualification, especially in the space of communication, you end up with a bottleneck. So I think it's a matter of taking decisions right at the beginning on what are the areas you would like to go with and whether you have bottlenecks with respect to licensing and IP. But it's an interesting conversation, not always with a happy ending. So.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
So
I guess the conversations can continue
just
beyond
one
the
thing.
stage.
I mean, I just feel for you, right? I listen to your story and I feel for you. And any time that you're single sourced, you're very much dependent on somebody else, right? And I mean, you really have to pick your partners wisely and ensure that you have contracts. But if you're, building very small volume and you've got a big dog like Broadcom, they can switch you on and off very, very quickly. And in those cases, you might be better off going with the Chinese mass-produced systems. Perhaps that was better for your model at the time. But the wonderful thing about this is you've learned from it, and don't give up.
Thank you. I really have to stop here. Conversations can continue. I really appreciate your time, panel. Thank you so much.